Marking the 80th anniversary of the victory over Nazism, we took part in the commemorative parade. It was more than just a celebration. It was a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made by men and women who stood against domination and oppression. The day before, we also attended various cultural events that offered deep insights into our shared legacy and the lessons history continues to present. These moments weren't just ceremonial, they were lessons. They gave us more than inspiration. They offered reflection. They offered questions. What have we done with the sacrifices of our ancestors? What path are we building for the generations coming after us? Are we truly free, or simply functioning under a different name of control? These are the questions that must push Africa, especially the Sahel region, into awakening. Today, many nations are fighting not just wars on battlefields, but wars for sovereignty, for economic survival, and for dignity. The Sahel is at the heart of this struggle. It sits at a crossroads of resistance and repression, constantly subject to political pressure, economic manipulation, and the looming influence of neo-colonial powers. Our participation in these commemorations was not about aligning with any global bloc out of convenience or political theatrics. The speech delivered by Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't seek applause. It sought action. It challenged complacency. It wasn't a nod to Russia for sentimentality. It was a study in resilience. Let's be clear, Russia, regardless of whether one supports it or not, was predicted to crumble under the weight of Western sanctions in 2022. The economic forecasts were dire. The ruble was expected to collapse, industries to freeze, society to erupt. Never happened. Instead, Russia localized industries, implemented counter-strategies, diversified trade partnerships, and backed its economy with tangible resources. That's not just reaction, that's preparation. That's a methodology. Traoré's message is simple. Africa must learn to build resilience before pressure arrives. Don't wait to be cornered. Don't beg for relief. Instead, make your own alternatives. Russia did this not through slogans but through production, innovation, and preparation. And yet, when African nations face pressure, their common response is concession. They give in to IMF conditions. They wait for donor support. They cut ambition and call it pragmatism. This has failed us, so what Traoré calls for is not imitation, but adaptation. He's not saying copy Russia's military moves. He's saying learn the lesson. Sovereignty without self-sufficiency is an illusion. We cannot call ourselves free if our energy comes from abroad, our food from imports, our medicine from charity. We must be able to survive without the empire's lifeline. This is a direct challenge to the colonial model most of Africa has followed since independence in the 60s. That model says, look to Europe for financing, to the US for protection, to the UN for validation. What has that delivered? Debt, corruption, dependency. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso rejected that model, and instead of collapse, they're building. They're resisting NATO's frameworks, dropping French military contracts, and surviving. They're detoxing from the empire. And for doing so, they're attacked not just militarily or economically, but narratively. Traoré is aware of this. He knows Burkina Faso was never supposed to survive without French troops or Western aid. But it has. And that's dangerous to the global order, because if one nation succeeds without the empire, others might too. He's saying, don't copy Europe. Learn what real autonomy costs and what it offers. Because once you kick out the oppressor, you need to build something in his place. And that's where most African governments fail. No structures, no institutions, no self-reliance. At Dmitry Mendeleev University, Traoré highlighted a deeper technical truth. African students are trained in theory but have nowhere to apply what they learn. They memorize periodic tables and chemical formulas, but there are no working laboratories where knowledge becomes action. We produce cotton across West Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. But cotton cellulose is a key ingredient in gunpowder, and we still import weapons. Why? We don't turn knowledge into power. We analyze but don't manufacture. We write policy reports but don't test those ideas locally. He's not just talking about chemistry. He's pointing out a structural flaw in everything we do. We lack laboratories not just in science but in economics, governance, and defense. A laboratory isn't just a place for test tubes. It's an environment for experimentation, for failure, for growth. It is where we learn to build. Weapons, tractors, software, institutions, even new political systems. Every major innovation in the world came from a lab culture of doing, not just knowing. Africa lacks this. So our graduates come out brilliant in theory, but disabled in real-world impact. And when there's a food crisis or a health pandemic or a military emergency, who do we call? Not our own experts. We call Paris, Geneva, Washington. This is a systemic tragedy. Traore is urging us to change that. We must establish active, protected spaces for development, spaces beyond foreign control, labs for agriculture, energy, biotech, defense. These must be local, independent, and long-term, and we must defend them like we defend our borders. Because ultimately, the war is not just on our soil, it is in our supply chains, in our memories, and in our minds. Power in the modern world isn't about polite handshakes at international summits. It's about capacity. Traore said it plainly. Weak countries disappear. Strong ones shape global events. That's not cynicism, that's geopolitics. Nuclear powers never lose wars. Why? Because they have leverage. You don't have to launch a nuke to win a war. You just need your enemies to know you could. Africa knows the physics of nuclear bombs. Our scientists study isotope decay, nuclear fission, and energy release. But again, it's all theory. We don't have the facilities to build, to test, to even threat assess. If we remain weak, we remain exploited. Traore wasn't using poetic metaphors. He dealt in hard facts. The world doesn't pity weak nations. It incomes them. It airdrops democracy while extracting resources. It changes leaders, rewrites constitutions, imposes values. So why are we surprised when we are labeled unstable the moment we stop complying? Just look at what happened with Burkina Faso. The Western media flipped instantly once Traore pushed out French troops and cancelled aid deals. They began calling the country military-ruled, chaotic, dangerous. But Burkinabe people weren't suffering, they were rebuilding. And that's the issue. The West isn't afraid of Burkina Faso failing. They're afraid it will succeed without them. Because that breaks the narrative. That tells every African child that autonomy is possible. Mali can do it. Niger can follow. So can Guinea or the Congo. One successful model of true independence shatters the myth of helplessness. That's why propaganda is their most powerful weapon now. Headlines warn of Russian influence. Western presidents claim Africa is being misled. But Traore flipped the question. Who's really lying? Whose interests do these narratives serve? Who's funding the news agencies telling Africans what to think and fear? He reminded us that history was rewritten to erase our power. Black soldiers used as cannon fodder in colonial wars. Atomic experiments done on African bodies. These are not conspiracies, they're facts stored in archives. Yet most young Africans have never been taught these truths. Our information ecosystems are still colonized. Even after the soldiers leave, the story stays. And Traore wants people to fight that final battle, the battle of minds. Because liberation without mental decolonization is incomplete. So if you're still waiting for global saviors, ask yourself, can you be saved by the system that profits from your limbo? Are you free if your food, currency, security, and education depend on your former masters? Traore's answer is firm. Freedom is earned. Not through slogans but through building. Through laboratories, factories, schools independently run. Through armies trained for defense, not dependence. Through narratives written by Africans, for Africans. That's the real revolution. And it won't be televised. It must be lived, built, taught, protected. So what comes next? That depends on you. Will you still believe their headlines? Or will you write your own? Will you continue consuming borrowed narratives? Or will you document your truth? Africa's greatest war is not against external weapons. It's against internal doubt. And it's time we start winning that war. Thank you for watching. To be part of this movement for truth, history, and Black excellence, subscribe to our channel and share this message with others who are ready to unlearn, relearn, and reclaim. Until next time, stay tuned.